BetMGM, the official sports betting partner of the Washington Nationals, invites you to catch hoops and hockey action at the BetMGM Sportsbook at Nationals Park. With a 4,000-square-foot bar, wall-to-wall video screens, 6 betting windows, and 17 betting kiosks, there's no better place to watch sports all year long. Enjoy daily specials while you place parlays, props, and future bets on all your favorite sports. The Sportsbook is located near the center field entrance of the park. Grab your crew and enjoy all the action you can handle every day from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. You can even make cash deposits and withdrawals for your DC mobile account at any one of the betting counters. Thanks to BetMGM, Nats Park isn't just for baseball anymore. Experience the dozens of betting options and promotions going on daily. Boldly take the court at the king of sportsbooks. BetMGM and GameSense remind you to have fun and play responsibly. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only, DC only. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. The following ad is sponsored by Pets Best Insurance Services.
Pets come into our lives in many ways. Shelters, breeders, or unexpected encounters. But no matter how you found your pet, they become our perfect match. Unfortunately, finding the right pet insurance plan can be hard. That's where Pets Best comes in. With a little information about you and your pet, Pets Best will recommend a plan that meets your needs and budget. Visit PetsBest.com to learn more today. Your perfect pet deserves the perfect coverage. PetsBest.com.
You're listening to 100 Words or Less with Ray Harkins.
Hello one, hello all. Welcome to another episode of just absolute nerd talk about punk, hardcore, metal, emo, whatever it is you want to call it. I like to call it DIY, music played in small sweaty rooms, or maybe even like slightly larger sweaty rooms, because I'll be honest, hardcore and punk is like the most popular it ever has been in my lifetime. And so, there's that element of like, as it grows, are we, still maintaining the same sort of, ethics and values and all of those things that we hold so dear? I think the resounding answer that at least I feel currently, is that yes, bands are being authentic to themselves. And hold on for a moment. Let's talk about the guest this week, and then I'll pontificate a little bit more. But the guest this week, I am thrilled to have Lexi Reyngoudt, who I am absolutely almost positive mispronouncing her last name, but I did it in her interview and she confirmed it. And then, I just am dumb and that left my brain. But regardless, Lexi is the vocalist for an amazing Buffalo hardcore band called Spaced. And they're releasing a record, No, they have a full length prior to this. Oh my gosh. Anyways, it's their debut for Revelation Records called This Is All We Ever Get. It comes out on March 22nd. I've heard it. It is really, really, really good. And so you can go to revhq.com, pre-order it. They got some sweet RevHQ exclusive color vinyl for those of you that are vinyl heads. I know I have mine on pre-order, so there we go. But Lexi was a great chat, and Spaced is a very interesting band because, definitely a punk and hardcore band. But Lexi, her own experience with punk and hardcore is like, homegrown in her backyard, getting exposed every time I die. And like, I want to say she said like 2015, 2016. But yeah, it's really interesting to talk to people who are obviously much younger than me and have that experience of being like, oh yeah, I just like randomly tripped across this because a friend took me to a show or whatever. And, it's very similar to many of our old head experiences as well, where it's like you just randomly see a CD or a record in a store and then all of a sudden Pandora's box just opens up to you where, I'll never forget. I mean, after, definitely going through my Epiphat, punk and hardcore phase, getting the first Victory Style compilation at, I want to say Top 10 Records in Tustin, California, long since out of business. But I remember that comp being on their front counter. I think it was $5. I definitely had $5. Didn't have enough money to buy any sort of full lengths or anything else, even though I was totally eyeballing that, No Use for a Name, Leche Con Carne full length. I was like, you know what? I can afford this. I can't afford the other things. And then from there, game over, getting into Dead Guy, Snapcase, Earth Crisis, Guilt, just strife. I mean, the list goes on. But anyways, let's talk about how you can get in touch with the show. You can email me at 100wordspodcast@gmail.com. I love to hear feedback, and, I've been getting a lot of interesting submissions in regards to, people being like, oh, here's a new record and, check it out and that sort of stuff. So always love to have that correspondence with you, the human being who is on the other side of the speaker, because, it's a weird relationship. Like, sometimes some of you have hung out with me for hours and hours and hours, and, we've never corresponded. So, you can change that just by emailing the show. And if you want to support the show for $0, and will take you maybe 30 seconds at the most, you can leave a rating and review on the Apple Podcast page, or you can leave a rating on the Spotify page if you listen to podcasts that way. I also publish all these episodes to YouTube. I will put a link in the show notes. That way you can follow along and subscribe and, be updated with everything that is happening with the show on that side of things if you only listen to podcasts via YouTube, which some people do. So just want to make sure that I'm delivering the content where it needs to be. And so let me talk about the popularity of punk and hardcore. I was having a discussion. I went to go see Further Seems Forever and The Movie Life and Fairweather Chain Reaction recently. Amazing show, by the way. I freaking love Further Seems Forever. I mean, Movie Life's great as well, and Fairweather was really good. I actually forgot they had 3 guitarists, and then I saw them. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Because last time I saw them was like 2002, maybe. I don't know, forever ago. But I was having a discussion with a friend out in the parking lots, and, we were talking about how interesting it is to, watch hardcore be as popular as it is, from Ceremony selling out the Hollywood Palladium of, 3,700 people or something like that, which is crazy. And I mean, it's amazing because Ceremony is not only an incredible band, but, they're celebrating their record Roner Park. And just so happy for them. And it's crazy because you watch this, and then there are clearly people who this may have been like the first punk or hardcore show for them, which is amazing. And it's just like getting to experience the largesse of punk and hardcore at that level is, pretty special and incredible. But you definitely want to, retain as much of the small room energy as you possibly can. That will get people who, want to start a band, start a fanzine, take photos, whatever it is that you want to participate in this scene. I think that's the only way that this thing continues to grow. And, hopefully that we just continue to, stay vigilant, so to speak, and not let this thing be so overly commoditized to where, the pro-core element, which is a word that, most people don't use these days, but, us old people use it. It's like you really want to enjoy playing in a band. And I think sometimes there is that element of just like, okay, this is like what I should do because this is what either my friends are doing or this is what, is kind of expected of me if I do get into this stuff. And that's great. Like, if there's that element of peer pressure for you to play in a band, like that's awesome. But, ultimately just really pay attention to the pure intentions of why you're doing what you're doing. So anyways, that's just old man on the porch talk here. So I apologize for that. But anyways, let's talk to Lexi. Like I said, Space has a new record that is coming on March 22nd on Revelation Records. And she was a great chat. Got to nerd out about Buffalo and how weird of a town it is, but then also how incredible it is. And everything about her and Spaced. So here we go. Actually, wait. Oh my gosh. I was almost forgetting. The weekly recommendations. I apologize. Let's talk about this week's recommendation. I will put a link in the show notes to all of the records and EPs and things that I've mentioned in previous episodes. I basically just wanted to kind of keep the, new music flowing, so to speak, and make sure that you are abreast of anything that I'm just randomly tripping across, because that is why we're here, to expose you to new bands and new music. So randomly tripped across this band called Jillian Carter. I had seen their name out there, never really paid too close attention to their music. And then their record, Salvation Through Misery, came out in 2022. I listened to it and just immediately became captivated with it. It has all of the elements of, really like Majority Rule, Screamo, like definitely that, late 90s, early 2000s, definitely some Neil Perry involved in there. But they have one song in particular on the record. It's called Watching a Friend Die. It is the last song on the record. I played that one on repeat for, I don't know, 30, 40 minutes. It's only like a 2.5 minute song, so you can see where I'm going with this. But I love this band. And so if you're a fan of any of that sort of, loud, melodic, screamo-ish stuff, you need to listen to Jillian Carter. I love them so much. So anyways, check that out. And like I said, I will link in the show notes a running playlist of all the recommendations for the year. So anyways, now let's talk to Lexi from Space. Our mutual friend, Mr. Nick Acosta from New Morality Zine. I always say mortality, even though that's not the right name of it.
I do it too sometimes.
Yeah, just like it's just slipping out of your mouth. Anyways, Nick clued me into you guys. Like once he started to work with you and be like, hey, check out this band, see what you think. And I was like, this is cool because, and I know that I'm not the first person to label you as such, but I was like, oh, this is like groovy hardcore. Like
exactly.
Yeah, like I got it immediately where it's like, okay, you're obviously not taking yourself very seriously, but the approach is serious and, you're kind of putting all this fun/serious stuff in a blender and that's what comes out. I'm going to guess that because of the style, like, yes, of course, you're a hardcore band and that's very obvious from your sonics, but then, you're never going to be the heaviest band on the bill. You're never going to be the most poppiest band on the bill. You don't fit in anywhere. I mean, you do, but I'm being hyperbolic here. Do you, is that a plus or a minus for you?
I think it's a plus. I'm sure some people hate it, but personally, we all really like it because we love mixed band bills. And like, I don't know, like if you're only listening to hardcore, I like as a whole, like that's the only music you listen to, I'm concerned for you. Like I can't, like if we like have a hardcore, like if I go to a hardcore show in Buffalo or like on tour, like 9 times out of 10, we are not listening to hardcore in the van, or I'm not listening to it on my way home. Like I need to listen to like pop or something. So I enjoy playing with bands that are outside the realm of hardcore. I love playing hardcore shows. Like that is my favorite type of show to play, but there are like pop punk bands and like indie bands that we've played with so many times. And like, it is awesome. Like we've played with Arm's Length, which is a Midwest emo band. We played their record release show and it was one of my favorite shows we've ever played because their fans were so like into it. Like they were like, oh, we can stage dive for this. And they like just kept going the entire set. And it was the coolest thing ever. So like I'm pro playing non-hardcore shows. It's not something I hate. Like, in fact, I love it.
Right. And I do, to your point, the positive side is the fact that, yes, you can play with, and I'm going to be a nerd and correct you. I think Arm's Length is from Toronto. Please correct me if I'm
but
wrong.
Like,
the Sonics. Yes.
Yeah,
fair.
They are from Toronto.
Okay. I thought I was going crazy for a second. I was like, wait a minute. I thought they were, and of course, me being the nerd that I am, where it's like, Lexi, I think they're from Toronto. Sorry.
No, you're correct. But they got the twinkly guitars, like
sonically, they would fit right at home in Chicago and no one would blink an eye for sure.
Absolutely.
But yeah, to your point, the idea of being able to play with a wide variety of bands is obviously a plus because you can be, especially when you're playing with, lighter bands, like any element of aggression, people are going to have a reaction to you. They're either going to love you or hate you and obviously do that stage dive stuff where it's like, oh, wait, I'm allowed to do this? Like, this is cool.
Yeah. And like, we've even had shows where it's like, heavier like bands, like we played with like Gates to Hell like multiple times, and we would always end up being the like lightest band on the bill. And like no matter what, I'm always like, I hope these people like us, because if they don't, like I'm gonna have a horrible 15 to 20 minutes. But usually it's like a breath of fresh air for these people because they're like, oh, I've just been listening to like the heaviest guitar riffs in the world, and now I'm like able to just like jump around and dance, which is awesome to me because I'm the same way. Like I love going to like heavier shows, like more on the metal side, but like if I can get like just a nice like touch of like lighter hardcore in it, it's perfect.
Right. It is. And I know that people always wear the rosy glasses and get nostalgic over the idea that, it's like, yeah, hardcore bands and emo bands always used to play together in the 90s and stuff like that. And like mixed band bills still happen, but it's just obviously more of it's just easier for bands that, are sounding alike to tour together, so that your average 15 or 16-year-old that's like, I only want to hear heavy stuff. Like it's it's just easier from a business side of things.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like the Military Gun tour that we have coming up, like in my opinion, I feel like that is just like a perfect lineup, because Military Gun likes to like sit on the fence between hardcore and like indie pop, and then you have bands like Pool Kids and like Spiritual Cramp, which like are also in that vein where they could play with heavier bands if they want to, or they could play with lighter bands. So it's cool that like we get to join in on that.
Absolutely. It's the tweener tour.
Yes. Oh my God, I love that.
Yeah, go ahead. Use it around.
Yeah, I will.
I know just some biographical information. Were you actually born and raised in Buffalo, or did you grow up somewhere else?
I grew up closer to Rochester. So I'm from a very, very small farm town called Holly, New York. And it's like right next to Brockport, where like SUNY Brockport, the college is. So like a lot of the times I tell people, oh, I'm from Brockport. Or, well, I'll start with Rochester, and they're like, oh, where in Rochester? I'm like, oh, I'm from like close to Brockport. And it's just like me getting to this like smaller circle. And like sometimes people will be like, oh yeah, I've heard of that. Or it's like, what? I've never heard of that place in my entire life. Like we have one stoplight in the entire town.
Right. Yeah. You're like, there's no reason you would have heard of this unless you accidentally drove through.
Yes. Like there's definitely more cows than people in that town.
Right. And like all those other, like so many people, especially when they haven't traveled very much, just have this conception of New York as either being, like the city, or just, completely like upstate mountains. And it's like, there's a lot in between there that is, just really diverse.
Yeah. Like there's also a lot of farms. Like there's plenty of farms, especially in like Western New York. Like there are dairy farms everywhere.
Right. And so you're, growing up, what did your family structure look like? Do you have brothers and sisters, like mom and dad in the house? What does that shape up to be?
I have my mom and my dad, and then I just have an older sister. She's 3.5 years older than me. And like, I'm very close with my family. They're awesome. They come to space shows when they can. Like they came to the Better Lovers holiday show, because I was like, guys, I want you to see me on this big stage, because it's probably not going to happen again for a while. And they're like, okay. And I knew that they would have like a cozy spot, like not near the pit. So I knew it would be safe for them. And they loved it. They think it's so cool. Like they're super supportive and super awesome about space and like me going on tour a lot.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, I would imagine that would be difficult if they weren't, because I mean, you would do it regardless, I'm guessing. Because,
oh yeah.
Because that's kind of how, us punk and hardcore kids are. It's like, whatever, parents, you're dumb. I'll do this what I want. But that's cool that they, even though they probably instinctually don't understand the music, that they still were permissive enough for you to, explore this weird subculture.
Yeah. I just graduated from getting my second degree, in May.
Oh, hell yeah. Congrats.
Yeah. Thank you. So my mom was just like, as long as you finish school and like, because I went back for English education. She's like, as long as you go back, you finish school, and you like go and get your master's, and like you try to do like subbing on the side, like I don't care what you do. And I was like, say less. So I sub when I'm home, and like I travel when I'm on the road.
That's really, it's funny, the long line of people that have found careers or jobs that do give you that mobility to, like substitute teaching. Like I know for the longest time, like Chris Carrabba, Dashboard Confessional, like that's what he did. And, there's like a lot of people in punk and hardcore have gravitated towards that, because it's either the idea that, okay, I can just tour all summer, or I can just pop in when, I'm home for whatever, 4 months or something like that.
Yeah. And like, honestly, it's so nice. Because like I like being in the school, and like I like being with the students. I do like middle school and high school, so it's like really cool to like see them, and they're like, some of them know about like space, so they're with it. But it's nice that I can just be like, all right, I'm not going to be here for like 2 weeks. See ya. And then they like are like, where'd you go? And I'm like, I was on the road.
Right. You're like, don't worry. Your weirdo teacher was on the road with their weirdo band. So here we go. Let's talk about English.
Yeah. When I was student teaching, the kids were like, are you in a tour bus? And I was like, you don't understand. I'm about to spend a week in a van with like 4 of my best friends, and it's probably going to be smelly at some point. Like, it's not glamorous at all.
Yeah. I'm in a traveling fart box. I don't know if you understand.
Literally.
And there is something that I've been always interested in with the connection of, education and punk and hardcore. I know not everybody gravitates towards that, but there is such an interesting link between the two, because the idea of getting up in front of a classroom of students is, very similar to getting up in front of a room of, strangers that you're playing a show to. Have you either observed that or made any sort of connections on oh yes, my job training makes it easier for me to play in a band or vice versa?
Oh yeah, 100%. For my final project before I graduated, we had to make a teaching portfolio so that way we could use it for interviews. And my professor was like, I want you to touch upon being in a band and the hardcore scene and how it ties into your teaching. And one of the huge things I talked about was crowd control, and how when you're on stage and you're in front of a group of a room of strangers, you need to make sure that you can control them into enjoying your set. And it's similar to being in front of a classroom of 8th graders who are not interested in learning about the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass. And you're like, all right, guys, I got to make this interesting for you. So I find that to be super similar. And also just how the hardcore community is so strong. We talk about unity and brotherhood and being there for each other is the same as creating a classroom community and making sure that everybody in your classroom feels safe the same way that you try to make sure everybody at a local show feels safe.
Right. It's the idea of, meeting people where they're at. You have to present this information. I mean, not have to, but that is an important piece of, history, or like you said, tying it back into what you're teaching, but you have to know what is going to, engage a majority of the classroom, which that's a skill in and of itself, just as a mosh call out is maybe a little bit easier to do because, kids are maybe ready to mosh, but still you are controlling the room.
Yeah. And I would argue being in front of a classroom is much scarier than being in a room of strangers, because middle schoolers, they're ruthless in a way that I love and I enjoy them. But sometimes I'm like, oh my God, guys, you're staring at me like you think I have 10 heads right now.
Right. Yeah. You're I tried to make 2 or 3 jokes to light the room and all of them landed flat. And what are we going to do here?
Yeah. Even when I'm subbing, I try to joke around with the kids and they just look at me and they're like, okay. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I'll stop talking now.
Totally. It's whatever, old woman. And you're like, I'm not old, but I'm old to you.
Yeah, they'll just be I remember when I was student teaching, one of my students at my high school placement, I did 9th grade there. And I was talking about my age and he goes, how old are you? And I was like, well, how old do you think I am? He goes, I don't know, 40. And I was like, okay. And my mentor teacher was in the back of the classroom, just in tears. And he was like, I don't even want to know how old do you think I am if you think that she's 40. Right. And I was like, dude, I'm 27.
Which is, and arguably that the difference between the ages of 9th grader and 27, that's, a lot, because when you're 16 and you're watching, and I'm sure you had the same feeling, when you were watching bands for the first time and you feel like they're so much older than you. And then you come to, whatever, play some shows with them and you're like, dude, you're 2 years older than me. I felt like you were 10 or
yeah.
You have no sense of how that calibrates in your brain.
Even now, when we tour with some bands and I find out that someone's younger than me, I'm like, oh, I'm an old head.
Yeah, you're like, I wasn't putting myself there, but thank you for reminding me age number.
Yeah, I booked a show last Friday in Buffalo, and this one local band, they're called Monomaniac. And the singer is in college, but the rest of the band are all in high school. And one, they are awesome. Like, very talented group of kids. 2, they make me feel so old. I like will talk to them and they'll just like do like high schooler things, and I'm like, oh my God. And then I'm like, back in my day. And I'm like talking about like things like that to them, and I'm just like, I'm an old head now.
Our friends at Rockabilia are back because not only do they love supporting the show, which I am eternally grateful, but they want to give you a discount on awesome band merch. Use this promo code 100 words or less. It gets you 10% off your entire order, which, that's like free shipping plus a little bit of a kicker. But if you are looking for stuff for yourself, your friends, your family, you can find it at rockabilia.com because, if you're like, yo, I love Bob Marley because I just recently saw that biopic and man, I got to get a Bob Marley shirt for myself. Boom, they got you. Grateful Dead stuff? Sure. Bring Me the Horizon? Absolutely. Kiss? Iron Maiden? The list goes on. The reason I name all of those disparate bands is, for one, you can find so much stuff there. It is all officially licensed, so that means the bands get paid on this. None of this horrific bootleg stuff. This is just a really, really nice resource for you to solve a lot of your gift-giving problems or just, buying a lot of cool merch for yourself. They ship it from the Midwest here in the United States of America, located in the Minneapolis, Minnesota area. I actually want to go visit their headquarters one day, so maybe I'll make that happen someday. But just love the company, love what they do. Like I said, officially licensed merch shipped straight to your door, and amazing customer service if you run into any issues, which, I've ordered from them before, never have. Spectacular company. So rockabilia.com, 100, that's the number 100 words or less. It gets you 10% off of your entire order. So go shopping and enjoy. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. We all want more time in our lives. Whether it's like, dang, I wish I had like another hour to, play video games or read more or get outside or whatever it is. I know myself that I actually get questions a lot in regards to this podcast. How do you fit it in your day? And like, how do you do the interviews and all that stuff to be able to then balance the rest of my life from my work and, playing in a band, and I have a family, all of these things. But that is why therapy is so awesome, because it helps you be able to sort out your life to focus on the things that, for one, really matter to you, and two, try to find more time for those things that you love. That is why I love working with BetterHelp, because if you need to find a therapist, they're there for you. So give them a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient for you, and they can be suited to your schedule. And you fill out a brief questionnaire, matches you up with your own personal therapist. And if you do not like that experience, you can switch it. No problem. No questions asked. It's great. So learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/Ray today to get 10% off of your first month. It's an offer just for you, the listener of this podcast. That's betterhelp.com/Ray. Pulling, back and looking at like who you were as a kid, as far as, growing up, and like, were you an outdoor kid? Were you attracted to sports? Were you reading a lot of books? Was it, a little bit of everything? What did you, find yourself being?
So I did sports all throughout high school and like all throughout my life until college, basically. So like in the summer I would do travel soccer, but if I had the opportunity to just like sit inside and play my Nintendo DS or like my Game Boy, I would be doing that. Like, my parents called me a zipperhead. I don't know what that means, but they always meant like I was just had my face in like whatever gaming device I was playing. So like, and they, to this day, my parents would be like, you look really pale. Have you gone outside? And I'm like, yes, I have. I just am pale. Like, sorry. And they're like, are you sure you haven't just like stayed inside and like played video games all day? And I'm like, no, I bring my Switch outside.
Yeah. You're like, I get my vitamin D. It's fine.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm old now. Like, I need the vitamin D, but like, I'm still going to go outside and play my Switch. Like, get with it.
Right. You're like, I am accomplishing both things at once and leave me alone.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah. And were you always attracted to the idea of teaching? Like, what was the, thing that pulled you in that general direction?
I feel like a lot of people, like, growing up, so my mom was an elementary school art teacher. So I was always around teachers. Like, she would have her teacher friends over, so I would see them a lot. And like, I remember, I want to say like freshman and sophomore year is like when you start to think about like what you want to do when you're in college. And I was like, I would always think about being a teacher, but I never knew like what subject I would want to do. And when I graduated, I actually went to school for audio radio production because I wanted to like work in radio, which never ended up happening because unfortunately it's a dying industry. And like I applied to a radio station in Buffalo at least 15 times and never heard back. And I was like, you know what? That's enough for me to try something else.
Take a hint.
And
Yeah.
yeah. So I was like, I just ended up working an office job in Buffalo, which was fine for the time being, but I knew I didn't want to be there. And I was like contemplating on going back to like school for my master's and trying to get something in that. And then the pandemic happened. So I was just like stuck at home, like doing my office job just in my bedroom, like never leaving my bedroom. And I was like, this is super depressing. I need to figure something out. And I remember, I think I was with my sister and my roommate because we did like a little staycation somewhere like in Saratoga in New York. We just like rented an Airbnb with a pool and just like hung out by a pool for a week. And I was just like telling them about my existential crisis. I was like, guys, I don't know what I want to do with my life. And I was like saying, I was like, I kind of looked at teaching, but I don't know what I want to do with that. And my sister was like, you would be a good teacher. And I was like, do you think so? And so my sister and my roommate started like hyping me up. And then I was like, I don't know what subject I would do. I was like, I kind of like English. I've been reading a lot of books lately. My sister's like, yeah, you should do English. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to go back to school for English education. And then when I got home from that, I applied at Buffalo State University. And I emailed the head of the English education department. And I was like, hi, can I talk to you? I just want to make sure that this is something I want to do. And she was awesome. I loved it. I applied as soon as I got off of the Zoom with her. And then I talked to a different professor there and got accepted. And I was like, yep, this is exactly what I want to do.
Right. Just fell in really quickly with that initial push. I love that idea of just be like putting it out there and not really understanding why you get pulled in that direction, besides your friends obviously saying that they could see that for you. And then you're just like, oh, yeah, I guess I'll try this out. Like better than what I'm doing right now.
Yeah. And I like told myself if I didn't like it, I would just switch my major and figure something else out. But I knew as soon as I was done with my first semester, I was like, I really like this and I really enjoy this. And then when I was like in a classroom for the first time, I was like, yep, I want to do this.
Right. This is a fit. Talk to me more about the radio attraction, because I mean, like you said, it's a medium that is still, large, but definitely dwindling. The idea that someone under the age of, 35 would be attracted to radio is kind of a funny conceit. Just like, so like how did the, love for the audio medium get pulled into you?
This is going to show how spontaneous I really am. So I originally was going to go to school for psychology. And then my high school chorus director, I was like talking to her about that. And she's like, do you really want to be a psychologist? Like, that's pretty tough on like your mental health. And I was like, I don't know, like maybe. And then she was like, I think you have a really good like voice, like talking voice. What if you like looked into radio? And she went to the school that I ended up going to after high school. She was like, I think there's a program there for it. And I was like, oh my God, I should do that. And so I switched my major before I even went to school there. And
wow.
Yeah. Impulsive.
Okay. Was this impulsive nature? I guess this has always been kind of you. Like, does this apply to other aspects of your life besides like career trajectories, as it were?
Yes. Like a lot of the time I am very impulsive, but like now I've gotten better at like making the decision that's right instead of just like saying yes to something. Mostly my impulsive decisions are like I'm coming home from work and I'm like, I really need a sweet treat. And then I'll just like stop somewhere and get like a cookie. Like that's my impulsive decision now. Now I actually like think about like life-changing decisions. But
right.
Yeah,
a little more measured now. Okay.
For radio, and I did the radio station at Fredonia where I went to school, and I loved it, which is really cool because I just finished reading American Hardcore Tribal History by Stephen Blush. Mm-hmm. And it talks like there's a section about like college radio and how that was so impactful for hardcore in the beginning. And I was like thinking about it, I was like, you know what? That is pretty true. Like I was just like playing whatever music I wanted to hear, and I didn't care about what anybody else wanted to listen to on my radio shows. And like granted, maybe like one or two people were listening, but like that's enough for me to like be like, hey, I'm gonna punish you with my music taste now.
Right.
But it was super cool. Like I ended up getting into the local music scene there because of it. And like I did a radio show called The Local Lowdown, where like we would have bands from Buffalo come on for interviews, and like sometimes they would play acoustic sets too, and like it would coincide with shows that were happening at this bar in downtown Fredonia, where they would do the radio show and then they would go immediately there to load in for a show that night.
Amazing. That's cool. And it is, you hit the nail on the head in regards to the only way that you could play music that was left of center at any point was obviously via college radio. Like maybe it would bubble up to a cool alternative, nationally syndicated or broadcasted show, but it would be at like midnight or something like that. And so, yeah, there was no rules besides, what the college mandated. But for the most part, it was like, all right, you're going to have the punk hour. You're going to have the Grateful Dead hour. Like whatever it is, like just make it work.
I was like, you are giving me an hour and I could play Every Time I Die and no one can tell me not to. Absolutely.
Yes. That sounds great. And so was the idea that you wanted to work at, your local, whatever, iHeart or Sinclair broadcast station, as it were?
Yeah, I ended up doing like, there was like an e-board, which was the like president, the like vice president, blah, 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 blah. But I was the music director of the station. So for a whole year, I was in charge of the mail that was sent into the radio station, and like, I would have assistants that we would just listen to like 5 CDs a week and say whether we like them or not, and then decide whether we should put them on the radio or not. And I loved that because it was cool to see all these different bands, and like some of them I still listen to today. And I was like, this is a really cool job. This is something I would want to do. So I wanted to be a music director at a radio station. But that's a kind of hard job to get to because there's only one music director at one radio station.
Yeah, no, it's very hard. And plus too, I mean, the shrinking autonomy of a music director at a radio station, it's like, it's so difficult because, 80 to 90% of what you're supposed to play is dictated by, AI or obviously like 700 other people.
Yeah. And like now with TikTok, where like a song will just go viral and it's like, all right, that's good enough to put on the radio, which like is cool. Like, I think that that's very cool. And that's something that like this generation is like discovering music through that. But that does kick out that job that I wanted to do. So.
Right. Yeah. So now you're having to work it in the, back door, so to speak, by like, you know what, I'm going to play in a band and then we're going to get played on college radio. And then that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. I'm sure that there is one college student somewhere playing space, and you know what? I'm thankful for them.
Exactly. I love it. And, I know you've articulated in other places as far as your introduction to punk and hardcore was, or one of your earlier show experiences was the, Tid the Holidays show that, still happens obviously in a different namesake now. But when you went to that show, like you were going to see like a local band initially, but then obviously stayed for the whole show and was kind of bowled over by the experience. What kind of grabbed you about, seeing either Every Time I Die in particular, or just that whole show that kind of really captured you to dive down the rabbit hole?
So I wanted to go because this band Bugler was playing, that is a local band that I really like. And my boyfriend, Dan, who is the drummer of Spaced, he had been going to like Every Time I Die Christmas shows for a few years at that point. So he was like, oh, you're going to love it. It's really cool. And he was like, you're going to like walk out of there and be like, that was the craziest thing I've ever experienced. And I remember they started, I don't even know what song they started with. I think it was right after Low Teens. So whatever like the first song is on that album they played, and it was just like insane energy in the room. Like everybody just went crazy, and I was just like, what is this? And why am I loving it? And like, I just stood in awe in the back, just like watching all these people like mosh and just like stage dive, and like it was the coolest experience. And like that was before Kid This Season was moved to Riverworks, which is like a 5,000 cap venue. So this was at this old venue called the Waiting Room, and it was like a 500 cap venue. So like imagine seeing Every Time I Die in a 500 cap room. Crazy.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, I had the luxury at one point in my life to I toured with Every Time I Die, like during the Last Night in Town era, and then
Wow.
we were just playing, whatever, 150 cap VFW halls and stuff, because that was obviously very, very early days. But there's something about seeing a band in a space that is obviously meant to house a band of that size, but then you do feel like you're watching something, clearly secret and special. Like you're like, not everybody sees this. Like I'm going to remember this in some capacity.
Yeah. Cause like then the prior year was when Tid the Season started, cause it used to be called Shit Miss. And then it turned to Tid the Season and became like this huge thing. And like, that was really, really cool too. Cause like it became this like mini fest of sorts. And then like the production was so awesome. Like they had like all this like cool stuff added into their show, but just like seeing a band with the energy that Every Time I Die had in a small room is just like, you can't get that anywhere else from like any band, honestly.
Yeah, that's so cool. And so I imagine that you basically just started to try to consume as much, whatever hardcore / Warped Tour adjacent stuff as possible once you really, were captured by that energy.
Absolutely. Like, I think I went home and I just like started looking at like the Spotify, like listeners also listen to this. And I would just like start listening to it. And I don't think anything really clicked for me. Or wait, no, Knocked Loose had already released laugh tracks by the time I went to that. So I started to listen to Knocked Loose more because I think E-Tid like started bringing them out on tour like immediately after that. And because of like Knocked Loose, I started listening to Jesus Piece, and then I started listening to Terror, and then like all of these other bands, and it was just like this like trickle down of like bands that I really enjoyed, and it truly changed my life. And it's just like so cool to like think about that, like one show in a small room can do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It really, especially too, because now you look at the, history of punk and hardcore, and like now that it's had time to gestate and grow over these past 40 or 50 years, now you're seeing like the generational impact where it's like, parents are taking their kids to shows, and then their kids are, it's just like, wow, like how much can spiral out from, like you said, just those small rooms.
Yeah. And like, it's really cool. Like how you mentioned about like parents bringing their kids to shows. Like recently in Buffalo, we've had this influx of like young kids coming to shows because their parents are bringing them. And I think that's the coolest thing. And like, even like at a space show, like I'll have just like a middle-aged dude come up to me, he'll be like, yo, my daughter loves you. Like she loves space. And I'm like, you know what? This is why I'm doing this, for the young girls who like are like, I can do this too. Cause that's like the coolest feeling ever. And like, I remember seeing like Paramore on MTV in the morning, like music videos. And I was like, oh my God, a girl like singing and like dancing like that. I can do that. So it's like, it's kind of cool to just like be that inspiration for like young girls like that.
Absolutely. It's very, yeah. I mean, not only is it empowering, but it just it starts to give you that feeling like, oh, I can do other things that aren't, typical, or there isn't just one path forward. It's like, oh, I can do this other thing that maybe my friends won't understand, but there is a community that's out there.
Yeah, exactly. And like, it's just really cool because like, my dad, like, the reason I started to like listen to quote unquote heavier music was like a radio station that my dad used to play in the car when he would like take me to and from school. And it's just cool to see like these parents show their kids like hardcore, cause like while my dad wasn't able to do that, I wish that he could have just because it was something so interesting. But now I'm able to show him hardcore, which is kind of cool. But yeah, it is like, it's cool to see that these parents are like passing down like records to their kids.
If you like anything heavy / artistic / just awesome, you need to go to evilgreed.net and order merch, vinyl, all of the things you could possibly want from a wide variety of bands, but bands that have a very specific point of view, and record labels where it's not just like the doors are cast wide open and like every band that wants to have a, web store and record label store, just here we go, Evil Greed. No, they have a very specific point of view. Let me just list some of the bands that they work with, whether it's One Step Closer or whether it's Magnitude, Quicksand, Soft Kill, Fucked Up. Like, they just have so much cool stuff. And they work with labels like, Triple B, Sargent House. And I just love what Evil Greed does. It ships from Berlin, Germany. But let me tell you that the shipping rates to us here in the United States are very advantageous to us. So that means if you order from them, not only will you get it very fast, but it's not going to be some absolutely astronomical price where it's like, oh my gosh, like am I spending more on shipping than I am the order? The answer is no. They are such a great company. They have, I don't know, it's like 40, 50 employees. They're just really booming over there in Berlin, Germany. I've met them, hung out with them. I can't endorse them more highly. Like I literally feel like a extension of an employee with them. But evilgreed.net, go shopping to your heart's content, and you will be able to find everything that you're looking for. I purchase stuff from them all the time, so you should as well. evilgreed.net, check out what they have to offer.
BetMGM, the official sports betting partner of the Washington Nationals, invites you to catch hoops and hockey action at the BetMGM Sportsbook at Nationals Park. With a 4,000-square-foot bar, wall-to-wall video screens, 6 betting windows, and 17 betting kiosks, there's no better place to watch sports all year long. Enjoy daily specials while you place parlays, props, and future bets on all your favorite sports. The Sportsbook is located near the center field entrance of the park. Grab your crew and enjoy all the action you can handle every day from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. You can even make cash deposits and withdrawals for your DC mobile account at any one of the betting counters. Thanks to BetMGM, Nats Park isn't just for baseball anymore. Experience the dozens of betting options and promotions going on daily. Boldly take the court at the king of sportsbooks. BetMGM and GameSense remind you to have fun and play responsibly. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only, DC only. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Again, you've spoken about this in other interviews in regards to, you were a theater kid doing high school musicals and stuff like that. And there's one specific question about that. Like, what was your, favorite thing to perform? Whether it was like, oh man, I love doing Oklahoma or, My Fair Lady or whatever. Like, was there a performance or two that you were like, you know what, that was my most favorite moment on stage with the, musical era of my life?
My junior year, we did Tarzan, and we were the second high school in the entire country to do it because it had like just come off of Broadway like a year before, and like the production for it was like insane. Like, we literally built like a giant jungle gym on stage to use, and I was cast as Turk, which, for those who aren't familiar with Tarzan, is the gorilla that's like Tarzan's best friend. And it was so much fun. I had to scat. It was so awesome.
I love, that's so cool, especially that wrinkle of the idea that not every school had done its like 175th performance of, The Wizard of Oz or whatever. It's like, dude, this is a hot property off Broadway. Like, let's see what this looks like.
Yeah. And like, it was so much fun. Like, and the soundtrack for the musical is so awesome because it's written by Phil Collins.
Yep.
So like, arguably Tarzan, like the movie, has some of the is the best Disney soundtrack. So just think that with like a couple more songs in it that are written by Phil Collins, it's a masterpiece.
Yeah, a lot of people don't reference it. They obviously go to the, classics, your whatever, Beauty and the Beast and stuff like that, which still are obviously very good. Alan Menken clearly knows how to write a tune. But when you come at it from the, rock perspective, it's like, oh, this is slept on.
Yes. And it's so catchy.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And so once I know Spaced, obviously from a, formation perspective, all people are always like, oh, the band that formed in the pandemic and blah, blah, blah. Like,
yeah.
That's fine. That's cool. I'm glad we covered that. But the the idea that once you started to play shows and receive attention, because there's definitely a different level of attention if you're a singer for a band that other people in the band don't get. Like I'm sure your significant other is a drummer. It's like no one ever pays attention to the drummer, nor the bass player. No shots against them, but that's just joking wise. But how did you start to, I guess, kind of receive that attention, even if it's on obviously a smaller scale? I'm sure it was flattering, but then I'm sure there were times you had to kind of navigate like, oh, this person's kind of, a punisher. Like, I don't really want to be in this conversation anymore.
Yeah. The attention is like always super cool. Like, especially when we just released Landslide, like, I don't think I saw any negative comments on anything for like a few days because it was just so overwhelmingly positive until like the like online trolls started to like come out of their hole and like discover that someone not a man is fronting a band. But that's besides the point. But yeah, like I love talking to anybody who listens to Spaced and like comes to our shows. And there are punishers, but like at the end of the day, I'm like, you know what? I can find something good that I talked about in that situation. Because it's usually like they're just excited and like they're trying not to be weird. So I'm like, okay, it's not your fault. Like you're just excited about something. So like, I think I can only count on like one hand that I've had like really awkward conversations. And it's usually just been like some random person at a show being like, oh, are you the merch girl? And I'm like, no, bitch, I'm about to go perform on stage. Like, you're about to learn in 10 minutes that I'm not just the merch girl. But a lot of the times it's just people being like, I love Spaced. And I'm like, that's so sick. Thank you.
Right. You're like, that's great. I love to see that.
Yeah. Although I will say when we're in Europe, like when the language barrier comes up, when we played a festival in the Czech Republic this past summer with Buggin', and from the stage to like the green room was maybe like 100 yards, and from like the stage to the green room, I got stopped by like 30 people for selfies, which is, I was like, okay, like that's cool, but like they weren't speaking any English. They would just go selfie, and I'm like, okay, yes. And I was like, at one point I was like, I just want to go like lay down. Like I just ran around on stage for 20 minutes. Can I please just go lay down?
Right. And especially it's like you could not communicate that. It was just like, yes.
Yeah. I would just like put my little peace sign up and smile and be like, thank you. Bye.
Right. Or you can, I'm sure you'll experience this at some point, the German compliment of.
Oh, I've gotten them already.
Perfect. I love to hear that. Oh yes, Spaced, you were good when you put that new record out. What happened to the or you were good when you put the first record out. The new one, not so good.
I know. We inevitably go back to Europe. I'm not saying that in a bad way. I love going to Europe, but like when we do eventually go back, I'm curious how people will react to the album over there. But I have gotten you scream so loud for a girl. And I'm like, yes, I do. And I'm like, I don't know what else to tell you.
Yeah.
But like a lot of the time I love Germany. Like honestly, I love the Germans. I do. But I have gotten a couple German compliments.
Yes, they definitely, just cut right to the heart of the matter. And like that obviously is what makes that country and the people that reside in it special.
Yeah.
So as you started to, gain some notoriety and obviously play outside of, Buffalo and start to, wave that flag and everything like that, when you started to have to make, and I use this in air quotes, but just like, business decisions where it's like, oh, okay, like, we got paid $150 for this show or whatever. And you started to interact with that side of the music industry, as it were. Are you the one kind of responsible in the band for doing that? Like, is it, do you enjoy that aspect? Where's your head at?
Thankfully our one guitarist, Joe, is extremely responsible. So like, he's the money man. And I like most of the time, at like the merch table, I'll have like my Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal like QR code out, so it'll just like go to me. But he's always the one that's like, all right, I'm booking the hotel tonight. Or like, if we have a UK tour coming up, he'll be like, okay, Lexi, like, can you pay this person for the van rental? And like, he's always like in charge of the money and like making sure at the end of the day, like he knows what the total is in our band fund to like make sure that we're staying afloat. And I appreciate him for that because I would simply disintegrate into thin air. That is just too much responsibility for me.
Right. Well, it's good. It's good that not only you have that person in the band, but that it wasn't, foisted upon you as being the vocalist where it's just like, oh, by default, Lexi's out there and she's going to settle the show or whatever. She's going to do this. And you're like, I am not equipped to handle any of this.
Yeah. I mean, like there are days where like I'll settle with someone or like Joe will settle or like our bassist John will settle. Like we're all comfortable with like handling money and like talks like that. But if it comes down to like the tax forms that you have to fill out at like specific venues, I'm like, Joe, get in there.
Right. You're like, listen, I can't sign a W-9. I don't know what even that means. Like
literally, I'm like, I got handed a W-9 like on one of our last tours and I just like stared at it. And I was like, where do I sign?
Right. Do I put my social security number or like who else's? Like, what are we doing here? Yeah.
I'm like, what is this?
Right. When you actually started to, go on your first tours and everything like that, I presume Spaced is your first time you've ever spent an extended amount of time on the road, right?
Yeah, it's my first band.
That's what I thought. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Like, that's what I thought. Yeah. So was tour, I guess, what you expected? Was it drastically different than what you expected? What was your perception?
I was thinking about this earlier. Like, I don't think I ever really felt like shell shocked by like the touring lifestyle. And I don't know if that's just because I knew so many people who did tour before and like had heard stories about what it's like, or if I just like, for some reason, am comfortable immediately with that type of situation. But like when we did our first like out of town run, I was like completely prepared to be sleeping on random people's floors. Like I wasn't like scared about that. Like I remember when we did our first like weekend run, my mom was like, I'm going to bring you to Walmart. I'm going to get you a nice sleeping bag and like a mattress pad type of thing to bring with you. She's like, I want you to sleep comfortably on tour. So like I had like a very cozy sleeping bag situation ready for me. And like, it just was never really weird for me. I mean, we've had our fair shares of sleeping in like very random and like maybe not the most pleasant places, but most of the time we just like stay at friends' houses and it's like very comfortable and like I don't feel awkward like getting up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom there.
Right. Yeah, you're like, we're at a spot that, is either comfortable, we know the person, it isn't, being brought to, the third story of an abandoned building or whatever. It's like, oh no, you can stay here, it's fine. It's like, no, this doesn't feel safe.
Yeah. Like when we were in Europe this past summer, we played in Switzerland and the venue was in an old like jail and we were sleeping there that night. And like the idea of sleeping in an old jail didn't freak me out. But I did go to open the windows at one point and just saw like the largest spiders I had ever seen in my entire life, just like in the window and like had access to come inside. So I immediately shut it and I was like, oh my God. And like, it took me like 2 hours to fall asleep because all I could think about was like, what if there's just a spider crawling on me? So like those situations, not great. But that's like one out of like however many times we've like slept somewhere.
Of course. Well, and there's obviously some ridiculous statistic of, humans swallow like 14 spiders in their lifetime or something. So it can happen at home. It can happen in a jail in Switzerland. You never know.
Yep, exactly. And I was not trying to test it out that night.
Right. Yeah. You're like, you know what? This is in my brain. I can't unsee this. So this is what we have to do.
Yeah. Ugh.
And speaking of the touring internationally, that's also, a very different experience than touring the States. Comparing and contrasting the two, what was the most different thing that you experienced with those two?
Accommodation is like a normal thing in Europe and the UK. Like, that is something our agent, Matthew, shout out to him, he's the best, like, make sure that we get most of the time. And they'll like make you dinner when you get to the venue and like feed you and like want to make sure that you feel comfortable and safe the entire time, which is great. I love it. And like, I love the US. Don't get me wrong. I love all my friends here in like the hardcore scene, but we don't get that here. Like, we'll just get like a case of waters, which is fine. I love a case of water, but it is cool to like go over there and someone's making you goulash.
Yeah, here's your vegan stew.
Yes. Oh my God. I like I love the vegan stew over there. It does get tiring after like the 10th time in a row, but like,
of course. Right.
it's still like, it fills me up. It's vegan. It's great. I'm here for it.
Yeah, they got it down to a science. They know that it's like, all right, this is going to fill 5 bellies and this will last for 3 weeks. So we're good.
It's probably so cheap to make too. I don't blame them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now that you're at this, interesting juncture of the band where, obviously you've signed to Revelation Records and like you guys are, doing even more stuff than you previously have. And now you have to start, thinking about like, this is what my life is going to look like 6 to 8 months out. Whereas like prior to that, you didn't really have to do that. Is it, is it exciting, daunting, scary, a combination of all of them?
It's definitely a combination because like I am very excited like for the album to come out, but it's also like, is it like, there is just like, I have a very good feeling it's going to do well because the single had a really good reaction and like I'm very confident in that, but there's also just this like voice in the back of my head that's like, no one's gonna like it. I'm like, so
sure.
I am nervous, but very excited. And like, I think that a lot of really cool things are going to come from it, but there's also like this voice in the back of my head that's like, or nothing's going to happen and you're just going to have to like deal with it.
Right.
But for right now, it's looking very good.
Right. And plus, like the idea of, whatever the hardcore scene, and I'll use that in air quotes, like broadly accepting or, denying Space's latest offering. It's like, you're going to do what you're going to do. And like, maybe, the largest opportunities aren't going to come to you, but it's like, who knows what that's going to look like in, 2 years with other music. Cause people, are either slow to the uptake and they're like, in 10 years, they'll be like, that second Spaced LP on Rev, like everybody loves it. And you're like, no, they didn't. Like no one cared about us at the time or whatever.
I know.
It's like, you never know.
Like I hear about like Twitching Tongues and how they were treated like back when they first started. And now all of a sudden they're having this huge renaissance where everybody loves them. And like, I've always liked Twitching Tongues. I just want to put that out there. So like that is a bit scary to think about, but also kind of cool because like if it does flop and then in like 2 years someone's like, I love Space and we have this random resurgence and we can do like a reunion, awesome. But I'm hoping it doesn't come to that. I hope that it's just like we're doing well up until then.
Right. Yeah. You don't have to be clear, you don't have to break up. I mean, obviously there's a joke in there where it's like, oh, you got to break up before anyone cares about you. But that you don't need to do that. It's okay. Just continue to put out music.
Yes, for sure. I mean, if anything, if this one doesn't do well, it's just going to like light a flame under us and make us want to do even better.
Sure. Absolutely. The last thing, but questionably the most important thing is, obviously you're a huge fan of, K-pop and anime, and like there'd be no interview that should ever not bring that up because I think that's in your written contract.
Yeah.
But so we'll focus on the anime first, and then obviously you can espouse your love for K-pop second. I know they kind of both go hand in hand, but, your favorite anime from a film perspective. And there's only 2 right answers, and that's Ninja Scroll and Mermaid Scar. But you can talk about others. That's fine.
I've actually never heard of those, so I will put that down on
those
the
list. Those are, to be clear, that's like old head, like Ghost in the Shell, like that era. Yeah. So this isn't stuff that came out in the past 5 years. But anyways, yes. But tell me about your. How did you get involved in anime in general in the first place?
Like when I grew up, like I was just watching Toonami on like Cartoon Network and like Pokemon. I loved Pokemon. I still do, but like,
Yeah.
It's so funny because when like the original Pokemon like first series like season came out on Netflix, I was like, oh, I'm gonna like watch this start to finish just in case I missed anything. And I was like, I've seen every episode of this and I did not realize it. Even as like a child, I somehow was like able to keep up with every episode. So like I loved Pokemon when I was younger, Yu-Gi-Oh, Digimon. And like I have like very vivid memories of like waking up and my mom putting like my TV on in my room to like help me get up in the morning, and like Naruto or One Piece would be playing, but I never like watched them. I would just be like, oh, there's that show again. And so I didn't really care about anime that much after like getting into high school. And then my freshman year, when I first went to college, my suite mate, her and like a couple other of my suite mates were talking about like this anime series called Attack on Titan. And they were like, Lexi, you need to watch it. And I was like, do I? Like, I don't know. Like, I've never really watched anime outside of like when I was a kid. And they're like, no, you got to watch it and tell us your reaction to every episode. And so I watched the first season, and I remember when I finished it, I like just slammed my door shut and like walked out into the hallway, and I was like, guys, we need to talk.
I love that. I love that, especially the assignment from your friends of saying after every episode, I want to talk, like, not like, let's do the first season. Let's talk about it all.
Cause like, not to spoil it, but there is one moment in like the first season of Attack on Titan where you just like assume the main character dies, which is like insane. So they really wanted my reaction to that. So
Beautiful.
Attack on Titan, but then didn't watch any other anime until I graduated from college at Fredonia. And I remember I went home and I'm living in my parents' house. I had just come back from like 4 years of college and like living on my own. So I was like in this weird like state of mind where I was like, I don't know what to do with my life. I have so much time on my hands. And I was like, maybe I should get back into Attack on Titan. Because at that point, like I think season 2 and 3 had come out. So I watched those, but like for some reason it didn't like stick in my brain that well. And then I was like, I think I'm going to start watching more anime. And then I watched Naruto, and I finished it in 2 months. Which, like, if anybody's listening who doesn't know, like, how long Naruto is, it's like 700 episodes. And I watched the filler. I watched all the filler episodes.
You're like, I got the full assignment. I'm watching top to bottom.
Yeah, I loved it. And it's so funny because, like, I have so many critiques of the series and, like, everything. But it is still, to this day, my favorite anime. And, like, I eventually went back and rewatched Attack on Titan. And, like, that's mine also, like, tied for number 1. But, like, those are, like, my 2 favorites. I also love Chainsaw Man.
Got it. Yes. That's awesome. And, yes, then the K-pop standom, I know, came around the pandemic. And obviously the connective tissue that happens between anime and K-pop is, it's there and it's real. But do you feel like your love for anime made it easier for you to, kind of jump into the K-pop fandom head first, or two separate things?
I definitely think so. Cause like a lot of K-pop artists will do like the opening songs for animes. And that's kind of how
I did not know that. Okay.
Yeah. So like, I think this one K-pop group called Tomorrow X Together, I think they did the opening for Haikyuu, which is like a very popular like volleyball anime. And there's definitely more that I can't think of right now, but that was how I discovered K-pop. And like, I started listening to BTS a bit. And then like, I started to fall more in love with like other groups. And it just became this thing where I was like, I'm trying not to get into K-pop. Like, I'm trying to be casual about it. Then next thing you know, I was like going to Target every week, buying a new album and like putting the photo cards that come in the albums in my phone case. And like, all I could think about was K-pop. And like, I would go home and watch K-pop music videos. And I was like, oh, I'm not casual about it anymore. Like, this is my life.
Right. Yeah. You're like, you know what? I really don't care about it that much, except I spend like 10 hours a day, like thinking about it and or doing research about it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And like K-pop concerts are so fun. Like there is nothing like it.
It seems very, I mean, I am not immersed in the culture, but it seems like a very, not only inclusive, but just like, it just expressing fandom in the most like truest of senses.
Yes. My first K-pop concert I went and saw this group 17 and they played in Toronto. And I went by myself because I had no one else to go with. And I was like, you know what? I'm only going because I really want to see this group. And I ended up making like friends with the girl who was sitting next to me. So like I had a blast. Me and her were like hanging out the whole time. And I remember like I never get like quote unquote post-concert depression. The only time I ever really got it was when I saw One Direction in high school. And like I was just in my peak One Direction phase. And when I got home from that concert, I was genuinely so sad. I was like, oh my God, when am I going to see them again? When am I going to experience fun again?
I love that articulation of just like, when is this going to, like, how come this can't happen right now? Because I'm feeling a lack of joy.
Yeah. I was like, do I need to like find where they're going next and like drop everything? I didn't. But it is such a fun experience. And like the best thing I can compare it to is like Taylor Swift and like the Eras tour and like how everybody like made it this huge thing to like dress up as like a specific era. And like she has like these light up bracelets that like go off with the beat of the song. And like that comes from K-pop because there's like these things called light sticks that like different groups have and they light up with the songs that they're playing. And like fans will choose like a specific like era, quote unquote, or like a music video and like a member that they like and dress up like them. So like a lot of what Taylor Swift is doing is actually started from K-pop. I love Taylor, but like,
yeah, right. We're all standing on the shoulders of giants. You just need to be able to trace back to where these things actually originated from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
exactly.
Well, Lexi, thank you for hanging out with me, not for me, but yeah, just hanging out for me. But I appreciate you coming on here. This was enjoyable.
Yeah, thank you. You asked some fun questions that I don't really get to talk about on these things.
Heck yes, that was a lot of fun. Lexi was a great hang, and just, I love it when people show up on time. The internet doesn't bother us. There's no weird latency or anything. Like, we just have a nice tried and true conversation. And honestly, for the most part, that happens very frequently on the show. But yeah, Lexi's convo was exactly that. So thank you very much to Lexi, and shout out to Alexa, the publicist of the Hardcore Stars. I am just calling her that right now. But yeah, she always brings me great ideas. And I was like, yes, I would love to talk to Lexi for the podcast. So way to go, people doing their jobs and being in good bands. Love to see it. Next week is another person in another good band that I am not only friends with, but just worship at the altar that is known as Code 7. And I had Jeff Jenkins, the vocalist of the band, on. I've known him forever, toured, played shows together. Every time Code 7 releases new music, I am first in line to listen to it and then just absolutely rinse that record, whatever it is that they're putting out. I've loved every iteration of them, from their early, metalcore days to the unbelievably hooky and catchy sort of space rock stuff that they're doing now. I love the band so much. So anyways, Jeff was kind enough to come on the show, and we had a great conversation. So that's what we got next week. Until then, please be safe, everybody. The show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Trust me in saying that no matter who you are, mental health challenges can affect you, and how you manage them can make all of the difference. That's why everyone should have access to mental health support that meets them where they are and helps them get through. BetterHelp provides online therapy on your schedule. It's flexible, simple to use, and more affordable than in-person therapy. Connect with a licensed therapist selected just for you. Learn more at betterhelp.com. That's betterhelp.com.
Hey, it's Malcolm Gladwell, host of Revisionist History. eBay Motors is here for the ride. Your elbow grease, fresh installs, and a whole lot of love transformed 100,000 miles and a body full of rust into a drive entirely its own. Brake kits, LED headlights, whatever you need, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
This is Holly Fry from Stuff You Missed in History class. The national sales event is on at your Toyota dealer, making now the perfect time to get a great deal on a dependable new SUV, like an adventure-ready RAV4. Available with all-wheel drive, your new RAV4 is built for performance on any terrain. Or check out a stylish and comfortable Highlander with seating for up to 8 passengers and available panoramic moonroof. You can sit back and enjoy the wide-open views with the whole family. Check out more national sales event deals when you visit buyatoyota.com. Toyota, let's go places.